Hello, everyone. Thank you, Stuti, for the lovely introduction. Before I get started, I want all of you to look at this picture. What do we see? A sitar, poised elegantly at an airport inside its case. But there's more. There's a piece of a luggage that is adorned with a tag that reads Microsoft. So, what I want to say is that I walk two distinct paths. One, as a sitarist, as a Hindustani classical musician, and two, as a product designer for Microsoft. On one hand, I'm crafting music that are centuries old, and on the other hand, I'm designing the future of technology. How does this even work? Two worlds that are seemingly disparate, but for me, they're in perfect harmony, and that is exactly what my talk is going to be about today. If you look at this picture, it's a blend of both technology and tradition, of both innovation and tradition, and of both creativity and structure. You know, people often ask me that, why don't you just quit design and do full-time music? And to be honest, I do not have an answer for that. Or when I'm asked what my hobbies are, again, I'm at a loss of words because music is not just a hobby. Design is definitely not a hobby. Do I revel in the joy of being a musician? Absolutely. Do I take pride in being a designer? 100%. And could I ever choose one over the other? I don't think so. You know, these questions have haunted me in the past as well, but what I have come to realize is that these questions come from a place of a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that both of these worlds, I'm split between these two worlds, I'm split between these two identities, whereas in reality, these two identities are just two halves of a whole. Both of them are my passions, they are my careers, they influence my life, but more importantly, they influence each other. They do not collide, they only collaborate. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, you know. So I was 12 when I first felt the pull of music for the first time when I looked at my cousin very gracefully play the violin. Inspired, I got back home and I declared to my parents that I too want to learn a musical instrument. And to establish here, I do not belong to any kind of a musical family or a musical lineage. But my family has always been supportive of all my dreams, no matter how whimsical they seemed. But the question remained, what instrument to pick? The keyboard or the synthesizer was suggested as an easy starting point, so that became my companion for the next 2 years, and as a part of which, I got to explore a lot of sounds on the keyboard. You know, I would play a lot of old Bollywood classics that would start with a prelude with a sitar and a santoor and then have an interlude with a flute and a violin. So as a part of that process, I got acquainted with all of these sounds individually, and I got inclined to the Indian sounds. After 2 years, I got wary of the keyboard. It did not interest me anymore. It started feeling limiting. Almost like, you know, when you are supposed to cook a meal, but you have only the microwave to cook the entire meal for yourself. But, you know, what I realized is that it felt limiting, and that's when I realized that I need to transition, I need to shift to a new instrument, and that is when I declared to my family again that I want to learn, again, not the sitar, but the santoor. But fate had other plans, and I belong from a very small town, Bhubaneswar, and we did not find a teacher who taught the santoor, and that's when sitar entered my life. And to keep things short, it has been 10 years since the sitar has been my companion, letting me express in ways that words cannot. Now that's one side of the story, which is the music side. Coming to the other side of the story, the design side, the other half of my double life. You know, with an architect mom, it was always a creative environment at home. I was a creative kid. I used to be the kind of a kid who would look at an empty cardboard box and think of converting it into a spaceship. Look at the randomest of objects, simplest of materials, and see potential in them. And at 14, I got aware of NID, National Institute of Design, which is where I did my product design, my graduation. And once I started preparing for NID, I realized that it was less of a preparation and more of a way of being observant, being curious, being inquisitive, being rooted in your culture, but at the same time being open to new ideas. And once I entered NID, what I realized is that it is important to look at things from two lenses, both from the lens of tradition and also the lens of innovation, much like how we look at music. At NID, we did not just create objects, we created experiences, again, much like what we do in music. You know, it's been 5 years since I completed NID, but what I still fondly remember is my interview for NID, where, you know, I was carrying my sitar, I was carrying my 10 kg thick portfolio, but interestingly, what happened is the jury members gave me a task where I had to answer all of their questions, not through words, but through my music, but through my sitar, and probably that's what got me to NID. It's been 5 years since I completed that. I have been working for Microsoft as a product designer for the last 5 years, but the sitar is not too far away from my side. Now, all of this sounds great, you know, but was it all smooth sailing? Absolutely not. Picture this, you're a kid trying to pick up an instrument like the sitar and learn ragas on it when all your peers are trying to learn pop songs on the guitar. On the other side, you pick a discipline like design, which is so unheard of, and again, all your friends, all your peers are laser focused into getting into IITs and AIMS, making you the odd one out at every single gathering, every single occasion, every single day. But do I regret choosing music, choosing sitar? Do I regret being a designer? Not a chance. Now the lesson here, it is important to have a vision and stick to it, even if it makes you the odd one out, because sometimes being the odd one out is what leads you to the most extraordinary places. Now, I don't want to talk about, you know, time management or how I balance both of these careers at the same time, or productivity. There's tons of content on the internet that you can refer to, but what I want to talk about instead is the synergy that these two disciplines share, how they influence each other in my life, how they influence my life. The important thing is that both of these fields are creative fields, yes, but at the same time, both of these fields are fields of structure. They have their own set of rules that guide the creative process. For example, in music, when I'm playing a rag is nothing but a set of rules, a set of restrictions put within which you can be creative. You can think creatively, you can innovate, and come up with something that is aesthetically pleasing, while sticking to a certain set of notes, a certain sequence of notes, while trying to evoke a certain set of emotions. Now, on the other hand, design is similar. We start with a design brief, right? A design brief is nothing but, again, a set of rules, a set of restrictions within which we have to be creative, we have to innovate. At the end of the day, trying to produce an output that is both functional and aesthetic. So I look at a design brief much like how I look at a rag. Both of them do not limit me, but they guide the creative process. I look at both of them as two different expressions of the same creative spirit, but only through different mediums, through different structures. Now, without further talking, what I want to do is demonstrate a little on the sitar, and I don't want it to be a conventional performance. I won't be playing any rag, but rather what I want to do is take up a design challenge and solve it through music. And on the sitar, what I will try to do is produce the same kind of an emotion through the music pieces that I will create here on the spot. Again, this is not something that I've done before. We are going to try it for the first time, and let's see where it goes. Thank you. So that was a, thank you. That was a demonstration of, how I would go about applying some of the design thinking when I'm creating some of my music. What I try to do is, think of what are the kind of notes that would probably evoke that emotion. What is the kind of a pace? What is the kind of stroke that I need to have? The speed or the pace of the whole piece as well. Now, as a part of my talk, I also want to present something which is conventional, a little classical. And given the weather that is, I do want to present a little bit of Rag Megh. So here goes, and we will then conclude the talk. Rag Megh. Thank you. So that was Rag Megh set to ek tal and at a lay of 250 beats, 260 beats per minute, which is the Drut lay. In music, we have three essential parameters, Rag, Tal, and Lay. I'm not sharing these technical details to overwhelm you, but to share something more profound about my life. You know, Tal is what gives music structure. It is the time cycle. It is what keeps the music stable, much like the role that my corporate life plays. It keeps me grounded, keeps me rooted, while giving me a structure, a schedule where I can be creative. On the other hand, Rag is where my spirit soars. It is my musical journey where I get to be creative, where I get to dream, where I get to express my own unique self. My suggestion to, and why this is important is because we all need a tal that gives a structure, a routine, a schedule to follow, but at the same time, we all need a rag that motivates us where we get to create, where we get to dream and express our true selves. My suggestion to all of you is to find what your rag is for your tal. The rag that I chose today was Rag Megh, but the rag that I chose 12 years ago was music itself. What is your rag? You know, this is not the most important thing. There's a third aspect, the lay. The pace, the speed at which we move matters, both in music and in life. You know, the key, there's a sweet spot. If you go above it, it starts to feel overwhelming and chaotic. And if you go under it, you will feel stuck or uninspired. The key is to find the right balance where both your rag and your tal can flourish. What I've learned pursuing both of these careers together is that rag and tal are not opposites. Creativity and structure are not opposites. They are partners, in fact, and that it is not important to reach the finish line as important it is to find the right pace where both rag or tal can flourish. That's been my talk, folks. Thank you so much for being such a lovely audience. Thank you.